Shorter, what your name is? Do you have a man who you came with?
I will begin the clock.
Welcome back, y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep 1 foot in the academy and 1 foot in the street. Super. Listen, man, I'm super excited about what y'all see. Y'all see we got another full house. Man, like, I don't know, we just can't keep the conversations to ourselves, especially when it comes to things that's so interesting and so poignant. And you know, today this topic right here is so needed. And as you know, me and Amber and Jackie were talking, we was like, listen, we don't know as much about this topic for it to just be us three. We could definitely just share our opinion on this topic, but we don't know as much about it to really provide some real insight on it. And so we called on some of our people. We called on other people that we feel are part of the Street Academy mantra. We feel that are doing great things in their professions, in their industries, but at the same time really have a heart for people, a heart for particularly Black people, and, you know, making sure that we have the information, that we have the knowledge, that we have the consciousness needed to make the best decisions for ourselves and our community. And so we reached out to some of our folk, and we are super, super, super duper excited about the people that y'all see in front of y'all. So this is going to be a great episode. You know, it's going to be full of information, full of knowledge, but you know, we probably going to be tripping out. You know, we righteous and ratchet. Y'all know how we do. Y'all know what y'all done seen the episodes. If you haven't, this, you know, welcome. If this is your
welcome to it.
Welcome, you know. Also, thank y'all we got new followers, we got new subscribers, we always got people engaging with us, hitting us up.
Shout out to y'all.
Yeah, shout out to the new followers, people DMing us and just showing us love. And so we just keep growing, we keep doing our thing. So super, super excited about what's happening. So want to show love to our guests. And I guess we'll have Jackie. Did you want to go ahead and lead into that intro?
Yeah, so today we are talking about COVID and the COVID vaccine. And, you know, there's so much packed into what you just said, John, about like us having opinions, but not being experts on this topic. And I think, you know, just given the fact that we have just this proliferation of social media where everybody has a platform, there's so much stuff that's being shared. And I think part of that is like, sort of like a lack of respect for expertise. Like someone who has just a platform has the same sort of range as someone who is like skilled in a particular area. And I always say, like, if I'm in a plane, I want someone who has expertise in flying to tell me what's going on with that plane, not just someone who has an opinion on Snapchat or whatever. So likewise, you know, I'm really glad that we have some experts in the building to tell us a little bit about what we should know about COVID and the vaccine. And so I'm gonna just let them introduce themselves, you know, spit your credentials if you want, which I think, you know, those are relevant to the conversation that we're having. So yeah, I'll just open up the space. We could go Shayla, Alicia, Drew.
All right. Hey, everybody. Glad and honored to be on here today. My name is Shayla Shorter. I am an immunologist, or a scientist that studies the immune system. I got my PhD from Emory University, and I currently work for a private organization that funds research for lupus specifically and some other autoimmune diseases. My interest in COVID is pretty extensive just because my background my dissertation was based on chronic viral infection and viral immunology. And as a person that works with people with autoimmune diseases, understanding the impact of this virus and vaccines on these patients are really important. So I'm ready I'm ready to learn and share in this conversation.
Let's go.
Come on.
Thank you. Alicia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Alicia Shelley. I'm an internal medicine, obesity medicine physician at Wellstar and our Presley Mill, Douglasville location. I went to undergrad at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and did my medical school at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm actually, it's so funny that when COVID hit, I just started at Wellstar. And so it was kind of not a crash course, but it was just trying to learn all the different things, having to change our office practice, how we were doing things due to the COVID. So this last year has been kind of a whirlwind. And I'm so glad to be honored to be on this panel so that I can be able to talk about the different things that I see in my office, to educate people about COVID, the vaccine, what you need to know, and just kind of give that information out, because just like Jackie said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think everyone should have the right information and make their own choice. But thank you again for having me.
That's right. Thank you for joining us.
Super excited.
Drew. Yes.
Man, I don't even know how I can follow these two women. But I'm Andrew Reid. I am a proud graduate of Oakwood University.
Shout out OU Ambassador. One time.
I'm also a product of Georgia State University too. Currently, I work as an epidemiologist with the Tennessee Department of Health on their COVID-19 reduction task force. And I guess with me, I kind of have a special look at COVID, COVID. So the microbiologist side of me thinks what's happening with COVID-19 is fascinating. But the public health side of me thinks this is a nightmare. So it's kind of like, how do you reconcile this fascinating thing in biology with this nightmare that's happening with the world? So, and that's like the intersection that I'm trying to navigate. But other than that, I'm happy to be here. I think we'll have a good time sharing information. I think as long as we get the information out there for people to at least make informed decisions about everything, I think that's the best we can hope for.
Yeah, that's such a perfect segue into our Off the Georgia Dome segment. Andrew, I'm kind of wondering for you how you are thinking through that, fascinating biology side. I'm sure like the biology nerd in you is just like going off at everything that's going on. But at the same time, you're a human, you're a Black person living through all of this with these impacts, like specifically on the Black community. So, I'm wondering for all of y'all, just any quick thoughts you have off the Georgia Dome before we get into it and get into some more detail.
So the one thing I'll say is, as Black people, we are dying from this COVID disease. So we are 2 times likely to be hospitalized with COVID and 2 times likely to die from COVID. So it's important that we not necessarily take the vaccine, but protect ourselves, because we are at increased risk of not only getting COVID, but then also dying and being hospitalized, having a severe form. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and for me, I totally agree. I think that I understand the apprehension that surrounds just the emergence of this disease and the vaccines and therapeutics that are coming out. As a person who's in the scientific world, like Andrew, I'm geeking out. Like I love it. This is my area. But at the same time, being Black, being a person that has an autoimmune condition, being a person who is living with, older parents that have pre-existing conditions, that comes with a lot more stress and, there's a lot. So I just say that all to say that even though I'm a scientist and I understand this from the biological point, I want to convey that I understand the a lot of the fear and mistrust of the system. So I don't want to understate that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to us to, I guess, to acknowledge the fear. And I guess with me, I guess one of the best ways to dispel fear is with education. So I know talking like with my barber, like he's like, you know what, I think I might get the vaccine because he's like, no one explained this stuff to me. So so I think when we acknowledge the history of what's happened to African Americans and Black people in this country, actually other minorities in this country, and then we then move to actually then educate and then put transparency in some of the processes that goes on, I think then people will feel much better, because it's a lot of things like a lot of people don't talk about. So like, yeah, we have the FDA and CDC, but how many people, if you're not working in there or closely related, how many people actually know the inner workings of some of these processes? So I think if we're able to dispel like some of these myths and like share this information, then hopefully then people can, like I said before, like just make informed decisions.
So to those informed decisions, my quick thoughts are like, I'm just on the fence. I'm on the fence for so many reasons, because COVID came at a time where we're in the era of truthiness. We have, fake news, we have all this stuff, and, the way the information is disseminated has become more under kind of scrutiny, I would say, because it's just like, do you trust media? Do you trust social media? Where do you get your information from? Where do you get your facts? And so because we're at a place where like facts are highly questionable, I'm just like, I'm not sure who to trust with this. And then it doesn't help that it's on the backdrop of everything that happened in summer of 2020. And then also just has been happening since Black people came to the Americas or were brought here to the Americas. And so it's just like, it's at such a heightened time of emotions, of like questions around facts and just fact dissemination and government, and like, I think also this whole thing just illuminated classism in such a crazy way. So it's just like, to me, it's just so many mixed pieces that go into why somebody would or would not take the vaccine, or how they are responding to even the idea of COVID-19 as a virus. It just makes you question so much, because it's just like, how do viruses get transmitted? And just like, it's just so much misinformation. So for me, when I think about it, it's just, I don't want to say I'm stuck, but I'm like, it's just complex to me. And I'm just like, I feel like I have too much information and also too little information to make a decision about it. So when it comes to like what you said, like an informed decision, it's just like, what information am I including in my decision? Because there's so many, the quality of the information, the source of the information, the amount of information, the amount of data that's there. It's just so many factors. And so I'm just kind of on the fence about it. And I would also like to say, I intentionally wore this shirt to represent contagion. And so I hope that as we talk about the virus, that every time you look at my shirt, you think about the virus.
I need to know from the doctors if this shirt is like for contagion. Is it a good representation?
Probably not.
No, not quite, but I get it. It's close.
You know what I just thought about though, when you mentioned that, Amber? You're contagious.
Didn't somebody did that in the beginning of the when COVID-19 first came out? They did a whole spoof on it. It was great. It was perfect. I was like, Black people, yes.
Please send that to us if you
find it.
Shout out to the Ozzy, but they're doing the verses with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm super excited.
I know.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
One of the greatest groups of all time. That's a whole.
They're doing it on Easter weekend, which is, of course, one of the weekends folks love to get together and dress up. So hopefully it'll be some people in their Sunday best listening to the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind, and Fire. That would be funny.
That would be me. I am people. I will be there.
And my sandals and my Kango hat, just two-stepping.
Linen outfit. Yeah, I'm kind of curious, as we're talking off the Georgia Dome for John and Amber, how are y'all feeling about the virus too? I mean, not the virus, about the vaccine. I'm sure we all feel pretty similarly about the virus, but how are y'all feeling about the vaccine?
So for me, I don't come from a science background. I'm kind of strictly coming from more so like Black history, sociology and all that other kind of stuff. And so I'm not feeling the vaccine at all. Which is why I think this was an interesting topic for particularly for Street Academy, because we're kind of all on different parts of the spectrum or whatever. I'm not feeling it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to say never, that I would never take the vaccine, because again, I don't know enough information, but I'm leaning towards not taking it at all, because I'm kind of sort of an anti-vaxxer anyway. Like, I don't take the flu vaccine. I think I've taken it maybe a couple of times in my life. In my adult life, I might have taken it once or twice. Um, Obviously, I got the kids vaccine when I was younger, and my parents made me do it. My daughter has been vaccinated, but I'm not really a vaccine person. I do subscribe. I don't subscribe to all of the conspiracy theories around it, but some things that are considered to be conspiracy theories, I kind of, based on historical evidence, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think some of this stuff is really like not good that they're putting in our bodies. And there are people who don't get vaccinated who live regular lives who are just as healthy, if not healthier. And so I don't know. And then, of course, thinking about Tuskegee, a lot of people bring up the Tuskegee experiment, but it's not even just Tuskegee. It's the medical apartheid in general. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can go all the way up to Diddy's, the mother Diddy's children, and how she complained about issues that were going on with her, and the doctors didn't listen. We can talk about that video that went viral where the Indian doctor said, no, doctors don't listen to Black women. They don't believe Black women when they say they're in pain. We can talk about the historical evidence going all the way back to J. Marion Sims about how there is this embedded idea that Black people can endure pain at a rate higher than white people. We can go all the way to Serena Williams, where Serena Williams almost died giving birth to her child because the medical personnel didn't listen to her. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming from. It's like there is not much that I can pull from, or I don't want to say that, but I want to say there's a lot that I can pull from that shows historically and contemporarily the embedded racism within the medical institution. I don't, people say, oh, well, a Black woman was involved with the vaccine. Is Black people a part of a lot of the institutions that are still inherently racist? That's why we call it systemic racism. It doesn't matter who's in the front. It doesn't matter who's creating it. The racism is in the DNA of the institutions of these systems. And so because of that, shout out to people, who are for or against the vaccine or on the fence or whatever, but I don't know. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, because, hopefully it'll, I don't know, give me additional reasons as to maybe why I won't take it from a scientific perspective. That's what I'm looking for from this discussion. Or maybe it might challenge me and change my mind. And I don't know, give me a reason to maybe trust the American medical institution now. I'm not sure. So we'll see.
And so for me, exactly what you were saying, John.
There is so much.
Oh, I'm coming in delayed.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, going to what John was saying about just the historical piece of it. Again, it's just like, what information am I factoring into my decision, and how am I prioritizing that information? So it's just like, you have the scientific community, but then it's just like, who within the scientific community am I listening to even? So I'm very happy to see 3 Black faces right now, because that changes things for me. That actually helps me a whole lot, because I do have a mistrust more for people in positions of power or authority who consider themselves white or who are coming from the white perspective. I just don't trust it as much because of all of what John just talked about. The other lens that I think about, for me, the way America works, we are first and foremost a slave economy, and then we are also capitalistic. And so I can't separate capitalism and this engine away from, I can't separate that from anything that happens in America. So for me, I immediately go to, okay, how is this going to put money into people's pockets? Because we know that money is a huge motivation for a lot of Americans, and especially a lot of the people who are in power in America. And so I'm looking immediately at these pharmaceutical companies. So it's like you have Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. And Johnson & Johnson has issues. I mean, just 2 years ago, they had the whole baby powder issue. And then I can talk about that more later, but it's just like they had marketing targeted. Once it came out that baby powder was a problem, they had marketing targeted to Black women. And in their marketing report, they had that. So it's just like, okay, Johnson & Johnson, do we kind of get over this? Like, how soon am I supposed to get over this? Like, what is what is in this for you? So that gives me pause. That gives me a lot of hesitation, even though I know from a scientific perspective, like, this is what the vaccine does to this, molecule in your atom or whatever hell, the cell, whatever. But it's just like, I'm thinking like, but why though? Why are you doing this? I'm really curious about the question of why, and why people get involved in the way that they get involved, and why people make the decisions that they make. So I'm looking at like the CDC and the committee. I was just looking up their names, like the committee who decides how this stuff gets distributed. I'm looking at all their backgrounds. There's not a single Black person on that panel. And so there's like one or two Hispanic people. So I'm like, if I just look at the people who are making these recommendations and not trying to do too much research into who they are, if the majority of them are white, then I'm also going to say that based on the 2020 presidential elections, more than likely half of them voted for 45. And that nowadays political associations say a whole lot about your motivations and about what you really think about race and in America, and who deserves to be here, and also who deserves not to be here. So it's all of those different factors. So I'm on the fence because I'm still trying to distill this information. I lean closer to where John is though, because I'm like, well, what kind of oils and stuff can I use to try to like get this thing working? And I know scientifically that may not be how all this works, but it's just like, let me just like protect myself or something. Cause it's just like, there's that deep mistrust for this whole system. So that's where I am.
So there is so much there. I'm so glad, John and Amber, that y'all helped to provide some context. So medical folks, when y'all jump in, you have some of that in mind. But before we even jump into addressing some of the things that were brought up by everyone, what is COVID? Like, just give us an idea of what it is. We at first didn't know that it was airborne. Like, from where we were last year at this time to where we are now, I'm sure we've learned so much about like what it is. Is it an immune thing? Like, is it a respiratory thing? Like, what is it exactly? Is it from 5G towers like they were telling us? Like, what is it?
I like to take that one. So, as you all know, I guess I'm going to assume most of the listeners here are in the US, and so for us, COVID kind of came on our shores towards the beginning of 2020, but it really started, as many people know, in Wuhan, China, where there were some people who were dying of unknown respiratory disease, right? And oftentimes when you go into the hospital, and actually our medical doctor can talk a little bit more about that aspect, but they screen you to see what type of pathogen is actually causing the infection that you have. And so when they were looking at, screening through all of the, known pathogens, they essentially noticed that it didn't line up with anything that was already known. And so through a lot of scientific methods, they were able to identify this virus, a novel virus. And so in the beginning, I think it was, we just called it the novel coronavirus 19, because it was discovered in 2019. And it was a coronavirus. Viruses, we tend to classify them into different families based on similar characteristics. So if they have a certain type of shape or protein expressed on their surface, we group them in different families. But fast forward to when it kind of hit our shores, COVID is basically the term that we give to this infection with the virus. Briefly, virus can get into your body through different ways, but let's say it gets into your mouth or your nose, and it'll infect cells in your respiratory tract and cause essentially your body to mount an immune response, right? So a lot of people with COVID, they end up with this type of pneumonia, which is this inflammation in your lungs, and your body responds really strongly. What's interesting about COVID is it's not just the virus that's causing damage. It's also, in some of the more severe cases, the immune system is so ramped up that the immune system itself is causing damage. And so a lot of the people who we see that end up on respirators, that have these lengthy hospital stays in the ICU, a lot of them, the situation is so complex because on one end, you want your immune system to be ramped up to fight this virus. But on the other hand, an out of control immune system can cause more harm than good, right? And so when you think about COVID-19, it is a very complicated situation that we're dealing with.
I didn't
I didn't even know you could have that kind of, that's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't realize that COVID is affecting your body and the immune. It makes the immune system negatively affect your body too. So it's like So basically, if you recover from COVID, it really is a miracle for real, because your immune system is what is fighting off all these diseases.
And the one thing that we've noticed too from COVID, just on a clinical aspect, is that there are some people who may have like a small cold and they get better and they feel better, but we're starting to see people that have what we call the long haulers, where they're having like chronic fatigue, chronic shortness of breath, where, just the effects of their body trying to fight this off and the COVID attacking the body, that they are having more complications. We've seen people who have no medical history then develop blood clots. And so the blood clots going to the lungs called pulmonary embolisms that can affect how people breathe. And so I've seen at least 2 patients who've had, like after COVID, just this chronic joint pain. They don't know where it happened. We can't find a cause. It's just this chronic joint pain that they have. So there are a lot of people that are still suffering with it. And like we all know that there are people who've died because their body just can't fight it anymore. And so all their systems start to stop working and they pass away. So it is a very, like Shayla said, a complex disease that just not only affects the entire body as well.
So you know how people say,
go ahead, Amber. I'm just saying that's the scary part to me.
Yeah, and that's where I think, to me, I know when it comes to the flu, people die from the flu as well. And the flu is something that people try to liken COVID to so much, to say it's just the flu, it's not a big deal. We'll get. How is it similar and different to the flu?
So I guess let me jump back a little bit too. So anytime we say novel doesn't necessarily mean new. It just means it's new in a certain different species. So if it's originally in, let's say, in humans, and this like virus jumps to like dogs, then it's a novel virus. So case in point, the common cold. A coronavirus causes roughly about 1/3 of normal common colds. So So in the sense that like it's kind of similar, it's like, yeah, you have like the respiratory symptoms. It's like you get that flu-like symptoms or like cold-like symptoms. Like that's kind of how they're similar, but they're different when you actually look at the genetic makeup and actually like just even going down to the biology of the viruses. So we can get technical when we say, okay, cool, like they're both like the flu virus, like influenza and coronaviruses, they're both RNA viruses. So the fact that RNA, it's an RNA virus, it makes it susceptible to mutations. So we know that like our DNA is double-stranded. So you have a double-stranded molecule, it's protected. And there's actually protections in like, let's say like in our cells, there's actually protections like when we actually copy our DNA, there's protections that it copies perfectly. Whereas if you're just a single-stranded, you just have a single strand like with your RNA, you don't have the protection to actually like kind of proofread. So then as the cells are making more copies of this viral genome, like mistakes can get in. So it's kind of like playing the whisper game. So you say like the cat in the hat, but by the time you get down to the end of the person, it's like the dog was driving a train. So
okay.
No, so like, yeah, but that's just like just kind of like the mechanics of it. So when you look at like COVID and like in just coronavirus in general, it's specifically made for, you say, a pandemic. Like pretty much, you can say almost any respiratory disease, like virus is pretty much made for a pandemic just because of how easily transmissible it is. But specifically when talking about coronaviruses, it's enveloped. So that provides certain protections, and then based on its genome too, like it makes us more susceptible to mutation. So it's not like, oh yeah, these things don't mutate. Nah, it's just doing what it does best. I'm trying to let me infect as many people as I can, so I can fine-tune myself, so I can keep on living. That's pretty much what all viruses do. So
that question was that, Alicia? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just
one quick question you're answering, because I'm also thinking about the mutations that you brought up, Drew, because I know we're hearing so much about the mutations. So if y'all could like help us clarify and understand how the mutations are affecting us now, and like what those mutations are, that would help too.
I just wanted to add with what Drew said in regards to and to answer your question, Amber, about the difference between flu and the coronavirus. Although we have the flu every year, the flu actual changes as well. So the flu shot that you get, it's always, we look at the our southern hemisphere, who has their winter opposite of ours, to see what the strand was that affected them, and then they will create the flu vaccine to help to mimic that one, to protect from that. But the other thing with the flu is that it doesn't kill as many people as coronavirus has done. The flu, what people die from is not necessarily that virus, but just kind of like what Shayla says, your body is fighting this virus. And so you can develop complications like pneumonia. You can develop complications like you can have a heart attack after having the flu. And that's what people normally kind of die from. And so even the same with the coronavirus, but it just seems in this case, it's just a little bit more lethal. You're seeing more people passing away from this disease. So it's, I guess, a little bit more fatal. To answer your question, Jackie, about the variants, and Drew and Shayla can probably talk more about this, is that we are, just like Drew was saying, is that the coronavirus is mutating. It's actually trying to do its best to have its best self, so it can continue to infect and continue to replicate. And so in certain areas where we're seeing that variant, here in the United States, we have a variant in California. Also, they have one in South Africa and Brazil, the UK. What we're finding that in certain variants, that it makes them a little bit more susceptible to be able to replicate in different people. It's transmitted a little bit better. And then also, we haven't seen that it's to the point where people are dying more from it, but it's just able to transmit better. In regards to the vaccine invariants, so when the Johnson & Johnson was doing its trials, it did its trials in different areas in Brazil, America, South Africa. And the variant that's in South Africa was about what they've noticed that with their vaccine and the variant in Africa, it still helped protect the people from that variant. So about 52% was its efficacy rate in South Africa.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. One on the previous question about the difference between the flu and COVID. So one of the things, if you think about like on a population level, right? A population of people that are exposed to a particular virus will develop a sort of, I don't want to say immunity, but because this population of people have been exposed to a particular virus, there's some kind of pre-existing immune knowledge, right? And so the problem with this particular virus is that it was totally new to the global population, right? And so the virus basically has a heads up, right? Because it infects us, our immune system says, we've never seen this before. We don't know what to do with this, right? And so there's that aspect of your body taking the time to not only mount up a response and that sort of thing, but it has to be educated on how to fight this. Whereas for the most part, many of the flu strains have been circulating within our population. And so you'll find that there are people that have pre-existing immunity to different flu viruses. So it's not a case where the entire population is susceptible to a particular flu virus, right? However, if we think about things like in 1918, there was a flu virus that basically caused a pandemic. And that flu virus killed millions of people. And that was because at that time, that strain of flu was totally new to the population. And so a lot of what we learned from previous pandemics, like the 1918 flu pandemic, we're using to understand and fight this pandemic from multiple angles: public health, biological, and clinical.
So then, based on what you just said and everything you all are saying about basically how diabolical this particular virus is, it almost seems as though it was created. So let's get into the myth. What's this? Who was it? I'm trying to remember what character was like. It was like evil. What character was that? Oh, that was on the Boondocks. It was when they were talking about the BET. What was her name? I forget.
Deborah.
Yes, yes, on the Boondocks, and they would make her just seem so evil. She was like evil. Like this, it's just like you said. It's like this is so perfectly designed to destroy people, and then it's just like, if this were something where it's like, yo, if you wanted to do like for survival of the fittest, like wipe the earth of like the weakest, it's just like you can say old people and minorities. People would say minorities, like Black people. I don't even like call it, we're not minorities, we are the grand population. Yet people who would think that if you're a white supremacist, which a lot of people in power are, but it's just like, if you wanted to wipe the world of the weaklings, let me devise. Can you go into my lab and develop a virus that will be a global pandemic, right?
This voice is
call it coronavirus.
Call it the novel coronavirus. Call it COVID-19, not quite 20. We don't want it to be 20. We want it to be 19. It has a ring to it, right? So it's just like, tell me about it.
Amber, I get it. I get it. It makes sense, right? So from what all of us describe, it just sounds like this is too perfect, right? But I think people need to, if you broaden your kind of perspective, right? Different viruses, bacteria, pathogens have been around since the beginning of time, right? They infect populations. Some people die, some people don't. The people that don't go on to live, right? So there are all these, for instance, there's a big myth about the idea that the virus was created. And what I'm going to say right now is that there is not enough evidence to conclusively determine that the virus was created. However, what I will draw your attention to is that, for those, if you think about biblical times, right? And there were plagues, that's essentially, that's an epidemic or pandemic, right? So are you going to tell me that Pharaoh in his lab in the palace created, you know what I mean? Like, was there a lab that created a plague that hit, the entire, Egyptian? When you think about it from a historical perspective, right, you understand that, like, this is actually something that naturally occurs in nature, right? Viruses, pathogens, they kill people. We all live in this kind of relationship with nature where, we kill animals, they kill us, viruses, and that sort of thing. And, so there's a lot going on. So what I'll say is that, number one, I get the idea that it's really tempting to think that, man, this is just like on the nose. They made this to kill a lot of people. But I do want to draw your attention to the fact that this happens all the time in nature, right? When I say all the time, it happens to every living being. Even plants can get viral infections, right? Bacterial, even bacteria can get a viral infection, right? And so,
bacteria can get an infection?
Yes, bacteria can get an infection.
Go back to school,
right?
I got a question about
From bacteria can infect itself?
Well, a virus a virus can infect the bacteria, right? So the point that I'm trying to make, right, is that when you see it from like that perspective, it's not all that crazy, right? Because nature itself is crazy enough without even our intervention, right? So
and let me jump on that.
That's what I'm saying about that.
Okay, so then if we think about, like, some people may say it's a conspiracy theory, some people may say it's true. HIV and AIDS, right? HIV and AIDS, when it became this big thing, the pandemic, it specifically affected negatively certain populations, right? Everybody talked about, AIDS in Africa, right? And AIDS in the LGBT population and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so, of course, epidemiologists would say it, the people that die from it, it was more so class-based as opposed to, affecting a specific group based on race or whatever. But we can't ignore the racial relationships between HIV and AIDS and, the people who die from it. But there have been people who said it was created, right? That it was created to wipe out Africa or to wipe out, minority populations. And I don't know. I mean, some people have kind of gone with that. But then also when we think about COVID, one of the big things when it first started was that it was affecting more so-called developed countries than so-called underdeveloped countries. And the sub-Saharan Africa was not as, I don't know the numbers now, maybe I can speak to it, but sub-Saharan Africa was not as negatively affected by COVID as Italy and Germany and America and, the UK and all these. So it makes you wonder, is part of these myths, you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of true a little bit. I don't know, it's weird.
So let me go back to kind of what Shayla was saying about like broadening or perspectives. So most times when we look at illnesses, we just look at humans, but you also have to account for other animals too and other species, because like herpes, for example, every species has its own set of herpes. Sharks get herpes, oysters get herpes. What? But they don't affect us because
use condoms because they need
because
to,
because
they
they're
need to be
for those
strapped
specific animals. So
Tell them sharks strap up
Sharks doing?
before you go with. And then we singing Baby Shark. We got our kids singing Baby Shark out here. Tell my daughter, you're not singing that no more. Not practicing safe sex. Okay.
yeah, so we're seeing like so each animal has its own set of viruses. It's like dogs get their own colds, cats get their own stuff there. The issue now is when viruses and illnesses cross species now. So case in point, at Georgia State University, they study B virus in their BSL-4 lab. In monkeys, they're cool with it. It's, oh, that's like a cold sore on a monkey or something like that. Let that thing come into a human being. It's not if you will die, it's when you will die. So it's when, so yeah, it can look like stuff are manufactured, but when these viruses actually jump species and get into a population it's not intended for, that's when like wreaks havoc. So as Shay was saying before, when COVID, like COVID-19, like this novel strain, it came into humans, like there was nothing that kind of showed like anybody's like, oh, I've kind of seen this before. I know kind of protect it. It's like versus like, okay, cool. It's like I'm about to colonize this whole new species. And I was like, you know what? Let me slow down because I'm killing off like the people real quick. So let me fine tune myself so that way they don't die as fast. So it's I definitely could see how it's like, yeah, this looks like it's manufactured, but then also too remember, if you have all the money and resources, you're not going to really care about people who don't look like you. So yeah, like when like a lot of the developed countries were getting affected, they were just focusing on them, and then they're like what was like the first world countries when they were getting affected, then these are like vastly populated places. Like look how many people just live alone, like in some of these cities, like in Europe, compared to other places like in Africa. So yeah, transmission will be slower in Africa and less densely populated places compared to places like in France, where look alone people just in Paris alone. So they're like, you know what? We have this issue. We're just going to try and take care of our citizens. And then like the world's becoming increasingly, what's the word? Like when you're just looking at your, like you have this rising nationalism. So who cares what's happening like in other countries as long as like I take care of like what's happening in my country. So you kind of see that effect. So if you have all the resources, you're going to dedicate all your resources to taking care of your population, and then if anything's left over, then maybe I will care about whoever else is afterwards. So that's just kind of some stuff to kind of be mindful of too.
I just want to just add as well, just like Drew was saying, there was a shift in our change as far as globally how we help each other. But if we look over the last 10 years, it seemed like for me, there's always was some type of infection, some type of epidemic or something that's going on. Like for one example, there was Zika 2 years, and then we talked about Ebola. Then we were talking, well, SARS was before then. So it just seems like every 2 or 3 years there's something that's going on. But in the past, what would happen is that the world would work together to kind of stop the spread. They would go to where where the outbreak is and kind of like hone on to it. So we didn't see Ebola spread throughout the US. We didn't see Zika going from South America to here. We had some cases, but we were on top of it. You had like you said, that mindset of nationalism. We were working with everyone else. The one thing we can look back looking at coronavirus is that, sometimes the Chinese initially weren't very open in telling us what was going on. And by the time they were, it had already spread to Europe, because people travel from Europe to China all the time. They do business. It was already in the US by the time we kind of found it. We were just like, oh, that's what this is. We can test for it now. So definitely the mindset that we had is, like you said, that nationalism made a difference. And then on top of that, we weren't doing the public health measures that we know to do. We weren't isolating properly. We weren't testing properly. We weren't social distancing. And it seemed like it was pulling teeth just to get people to even want to hold on to those different truths. Even now, you see people stabbing people from asking them to wear a mask. Like, the tools that actually have worked in the past were not necessarily implemented or promoted as well initially.
Yeah, I mean,
It's me, it makes stuff harder too, because I know we talk about, oh, if you're sick, take time off from work. I remember, I won't name this former employer, but I told them, it's like, I feel like I'm coming down with the flu. And they were like, yeah, how about you take 2 aspirins and we'll see you in the morning? And I'm like, what sense does that make? If I'm telling you I got the flu, would you rather risk one worker, or would you rather me come back here, affect a bunch of other people, and then have a bunch of people out like for a week? I was like, the choice is yours. Then when I said that, they were like, okay, yeah, no, just take some time off. So I think when you add in, like, I guess everything, just this constant, like, if you're able to take time off, or people don't want you to take time off, then that also has something to deal with it too.
y'all are highlighting for me how many different ways the like medical issues connect to the work of racism, anti-Blackness, furthering capitalism, because even as we're talking about like the rise in nationalism, a lot of that is fueled by racism and anti-Blackness. And as you're talking about taking time off of work, like a lot of that is caring for the company's line as opposed to caring for people. So there's so much here about just how medical issues, viruses, etc., just like further the work of like racist, like structural racism and anti-Blackness and things like that. I have a question. I mean, it might be a myth or not. Do y'all think that COVID-19 was here before March? Because I know a lot of people are like, I was sick and it sounds like COVID. I know I was sick in December last year and I was like, it kind of feel, I wasn't breathing right. It might've been COVID. So I'm kind of curious what y'all think about that.
Yeah, I would say that it's hard to know, because number one, we weren't testing for it, right? So although we do know the end of December was when the Chinese were aware of it, like I said, people were moving, people fly in and out of China for business. So it's hard to know when it actually got to our stores, because we weren't testing for it. We didn't have a test. We didn't know what it was,
And we didn't take it seriously till around March.
Yeah.
Because like, I remember I was still traveling up till March 2020. So, yeah, so it's possible it could have been here. It's possible it couldn't have. At least I could say the one good thing that the Chinese did was that they sequenced it. So most times when you go in and you go to the doctor and you say, oh, I'm feeling sick, and they'll like swab your nose or whatever, they'll run a panel. And with the Chinese, they actually had an extra slot there to kind of like sequence, because you sequence for a few stuff. So we know like, okay, we sequence for this gene in coronavirus, so we think it's coronavirus, or we'll sequence for this, see if it's influenza. So they just happened, they have an extra slot there, and they're like, let's just sequence this, and they find out it's like, oh, this is not the same as we normally see before, and that's what alerted them. And then by the time it got to us, they're like, hey guys, something's new, so do what you want for the information. Oh, by the way, we sequenced it. And then everyone else was kind of left to, oh, there's something new. Okay, let's see what we can do with this information. And then that's why all of last year, just like, oh, testing. And everybody's like, okay, how best can we make like the best test to identify this? So yeah, there's just a lot that goes into a lot of this.
So I guess with all this said, what is up with the vaccine? Like, I'm guessing that y'all are going to say we should take it, but why? Like, what's in it? How is it protecting us, especially against these mutations that y'all are talking about? Is it even effective against these mutations? What's in it? Should we be concerned? Should we wait?
And I just want to say also, because I like what you said, Jackie, about, I'm assuming you guys are going to say that we should take it because all of you work to some degree in the medical field and, in this in this industry. That's why we reached out to you. But what about people who don't believe we should take it, who are being silenced? I'm a person who listens to Minister Farrakhan. And I try to get different perspectives on things. And I know he's been anti-vaccine, I think in general, but specifically with COVID. And what I'm starting to see is that people not just him, but anybody, celebrities, people who are saying, I don't think we should take the vaccine, I'm seeing them being silenced. And so another thing I don't like is this idea of whether you believe we should or not, why any institution who silences the contrary idea so that people can get a broad range of thoughts and perspectives and they make their own decision. I'm also leery of that, because if you have to silence somebody who opposes your view, then you must not think that your view is strong enough, which means it makes me think, I don't know, it's something that they might be saying that you don't want to get out there. So I also want y'all to, if y'all can speak to that as well.
So I'll just start off and say, um, the reason why we're trying to encourage people to get the vaccine is that in order for us to kind of get back to some semblance of normalcy, is we need to get around herd immunity, which is about 70% of us, right? So I don't think there are going to be people, like you said, who aren't going to get vaccines, who people can't get vaccines, they're allergic to them, they have anaphylaxis, they have a history of anaphylaxis, meaning swelling of the throat when they've gotten vaccines, or they've had some other complications, so they can't really get it. But if a majority of us can either get the vaccine or have the COVID virus, we can be able to get that herd immunity. In regards to people being silenced, I can't necessarily speak to that personally. I don't know who it is, whether it's just, I know we're in sometime this cancel culture where you say something wrong and people just silence you or they try to cancel you. But, I think definitely my goal is to kind of help, just like I think Drew and Shayla says, to kind of help give education so people can understand. And then the third question, a lot of questions there, Jackie. You asked, what is in the virus? What is in this vaccine? So, all right, let me quickly, and then we'll have kind of discuss the differences. So currently we have 3 different vaccines that have been approved in the United States. We have the Pfizer, Moderna, and the J&J, or Johnson & Johnson. The difference is, and this is kind of what Drew and Shayla have mentioned, was that the Moderna and Pfizer is an mRNA type of vaccine, meaning that it takes a single coded genetic material of the coronavirus and actually encapsulates it with a lipid particle. And it basically, when we get the injection, it goes into our body. What it does, it helps to elicit an immune response so that the body can be primed for were to become in contact with the COVID disease. And so the body knows how to fight it off. So usually what happens when we get sick, the body sees something that's abnormal and it's like, oh, this is abnormal. We have to fight it. And it starts to ramp up. It starts to build up all these different white cells, T cells, all these immune factors to kind of help fight the help to fight the disease. However, it takes time for the body to do that. So in that time that the body is trying to ramp up to kill that virus or bacteria, that particular bacteria and virus is actually replicating and causing the body to get sick. So what the vaccine does in general, it allows the body to be primed. So it kind of knows what to look for. So if you get exposed to the COVID disease, your body's like, oh, I know this. I know how to fight it. Come on, we can do this. And so it fights it off before that virus has a chance to replicate. And so that's the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine. The J&J, how they use to kind of promote that immune response is they use an adenovirus, which is an inactive form of virus to kind of to bring that genetic code of the coronavirus into the body so the body can be primed. So that's the difference between the two. And then Shayla and Drew can add on if there's something I missed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can add on to that, and let me share my screen real quick, just to kind of, I guess, give people if I can, just a visual representation of what you're saying about the time between that.
I'm not sure if it will let you, because let me see. Y'all go ahead. I'm gonna see if I can make Drew the host, if I can find a way to do that, and then you can share the screen if somebody else wants to.
Yeah, in the meantime, can y'all talk about also what's not in it? Because I've heard like a bunch of stuff that's in it, and I'm like, okay, well, like aborted cells and live virus and all that stuff. And yes, chips,
vaccine.
Yes, all that kind of stuff. Trackers. Yeah. What is not?
Yeah. So there are no okay, let me start by saying this. For the people who are concerned about being tracked, if you have a cell phone,
True.
if you use a credit
Yes.
card, if you, I mean,
You're watching this.
trust me, trust me, they do not need to
Hey,
put
Joe.
a chip in
What's
a
up, Pablo?
vaccine in order to
I see y'all.
track you. Okay, like they're on that,
Already
right?
doing it.
They know what we're doing right now, right? Um, but I know there's a lot of fear around you know, what's in the vaccine. And if you go to, so one of the things I appreciate, if you go to the websites of Moderna, Pfizer, I haven't looked at the J&J website, but they do give an info sheet that details what's in it, right? And so for instance, with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are actually pretty similar, both in the way they work and how they're structured. And so like Alicia said, you know, you have the mRNA, which is this genetic code. You can think of it as like, it's like us delivering the instructions or the template to our immune system to say, here's what you should be looking for. I need you to create antibodies against this specific thing, right? So you think about it, instructions. But when you're putting it in the body, you can't just put it in by itself, right? Because your body, it can be destroyed pretty easily. So what you do is you protect that piece of genetic material with lipids or fats, right? And in order to keep that all stable, there are things like sugars. So you'll see, if you see sucrose, that's a type of sugar that they use to stabilize it. They use different types of salts to stabilize like this unit, right? Because you want to make sure that it's stable enough, the same way a medication will be in a capsule, and when you take it, you need for it to like get down to your body, right, in order for it to, you know, get to the site and dissolve and everything. And so it's similar with the vaccine, right? They're creating this little unit that protects that genetic material so that when it gets into your body, it's protected enough until the point where the immune system can essentially read the instructions and say, all right, we know what to do. So I say all that to say, check. I know there's a lot of mistrust, but check the websites of the respective companies. You can check the CDC website or the World Health Organization website, where they'll list, you know, information about the vaccines, a little bit about how they work, maybe not so much as what's in it, but information about how it works. And, you know, I think you'll get a good idea of what's in it. I want to, Jackie, so with that being said, John, I wanted to address your point, right? So the conspiracy theory, or no, I'm not going to say, so people have these ideas that, hey, you know, whether it's there's aborted fetal cells in here, or they're really trying to track us, or this, one of the reasons why there's been some effort to, as you say, silence these ideas in the main forum is that from what we can see from a scientific or medical perspective, this is such a huge emergency that to introduce ideas that would hamper the goal of achieving herd immunity would be really detrimental. So again, I want to cite 1918 when the world had the flu epidemic, right? They didn't have vaccines, right? They were able to eventually get to normal after about 2 years, but that cost millions of lives, millions, right? And so what we're trying to do is prevent that massive cost of human lives, you know, by using this vaccine, right? And you know, it's not that our message isn't strong enough, but I think either Jackie, somebody said this in the beginning, but if everybody has a platform that's, you know, easily accessible, right? Like, how do you know? Like, if I told you, hey, you know, this pilot doesn't know how to fly the plane, I know how to fly the plane because I know, right? I don't have the expertise for that, right? And so you have people who don't have expertise,
Sure.
definitely are concerned about what's happening, but they don't have the expertise to give you specific guidance on this issue. Do we need to be concerned about this as Black people, as people who have been historically used for a lot of heinous, like disgusting, horrible practices? Yes, I understand we need to be wary about this. But again, like if we it's important that we're not myopic about this, right? This is bigger than us as Black people. I'm Black, so I do care about our community. And as Alicia said, we're dying, right? But this is bigger than that, right? The entire world is being faced with this. Yes, we're dying at higher rates, but white people, Native American people, Asian people, we're all dying. This is not something that was specifically designed to wipe out Black people. This is affecting us all. And the reason why you see this such a strong coordinated response to this is because it affects people that, you know, white people, and they don't want to die either. So they're gonna make sure they design something to make us survive, right? And it's sad to say that, but like there's more work put into things like this than Ebola, because Ebola is not in the Western world. So not as much research is being done in that, but the research is being done in this, right? So I can be very wordy. So I hope you got what I was trying to say about this.
That was really good. That was
helpful.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Amber. You wanted to say something earlier, and I cut you off. So let me.
Oh no, good.
Can I just speak to the aborted cells? That myth, shall we say?
Yeah.
So where is that coming from, right? So what happens is back in the 1970s, 1980s, they've removed cells from an elective abortion that was performed there, and they've taken those cells to a lab where they kind of help replicate those particular cells. When people are making vaccines, and this is actually has been developed in many other vaccines, they need human cells to actually see, does this vaccine help prevent the virus? And so there's no necessarily the aborted cell, or there's the aborted tissue has not been used. They just removed some of the cells, the fetal cells, and have been generating it into in a lab. And so the Pfizer and Moderna have used those different cells to kind of test that the vaccine actually works, that it can actually reduce the virus. And then Pfizer has used those fetal cells in order to, or that cell line, shall we say, to actually help manufacture, but it is not actually in the vaccine itself. So there's no aborted tissue, there's no aborted fetuses that are being used in this vaccine.
That's helpful. I was going to ask, like, because these vaccines are different types, do you all have a recommendation for one over the other, or which one would you take, or which one do you think might have the least impact? Because I know that there are some symptoms after you take it. So for you all, what, in your opinion, is there like a rank order that you would take the vaccine?
And I guess, a second part to Amber's question. I'm assuming that some of y'all at least are already vaccinated. So which one did you take, if so?
So I guess where I am right now, I'm apparently, I guess being young and healthy is, I'm not eligible for the vaccine. So thankfully in Ohio, they actually opened up it where I can get vaccinated at the end of the month. So it's kind of hard to, you can't really compare all the vaccines together like side by side, because they were all designed differently. So like we see that Moderna and Pfizer, they have an efficacy rate of 94, 95%. And then you're seeing then like in the Janssen, you're seeing like in the 80s. But it's like, but then people are like, oh no, Janssen might not be better. But then it's like, you can't really look at it that way because the designs were totally different. So when the Moderna and Pfizer, when they were made before the variants. And then their things was mainly looking at, can this prevent systematic illness, like symptomatic illness? Whereas when you look at the Janssen, it was developed in the midst of all these variants. And then they were like, you know what, then let's also look at if we can develop an immune response, and then also if we can also prevent mild to severe complications. So you can't necessarily say that they, like, you can't really compare them head to head. That's like saying, let's compare a grass and an orange, like which one like will be better for me? Like you can't, just because they were designed differently. I would say if you're thinking about getting it, whichever one is available to you. If you're the type of person that you want this to be done quickly with, get the one shot Johnson & Johnson. Then you don't have to worry about it ever again. If you're like whatever, they only have the mRNA ones, I'll go for those. So it really depends on your personal preference, but you can't really say this one's better than the other.
The
I'd
other
like
thing,
to just, go ahead, Alicia.
sorry, I'll just say it real quick. So I particularly got the Pfizer vaccine, but that was just what was available at the time. So the supply is still, although the supply is getting better, it's still kind of, hard to kind of get an appointment sometimes. So you gotta get what you can. And so at this point, if it's the Pfizer's, the Moderna's, the J&J, get what is available would be how I would say it. I'm sorry, Shayla, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Drew said. So one of the things that I try to share with people is the key thing to know about these vaccines is that they do a good job of preventing hospitalization and death, right? And so I just want to draw people's attention to this, that these vaccines, again, were designed to avoid the catastrophic human loss that would occur if we didn't have it, right? We already have over 500,000 people dead just in the United States, right? Just in the United States. Without therapeutics, without vaccines, that number will be much higher, right? And the other thing, and Alicia, maybe you can speak on this a little more. So I think people forget that, again, when you think about the toll of having lots of people having COVID at the same time and all being in the hospital, in taking up beds in the ICU, and this is not they're in the ICU for 3 days. This is long time in the ICU. So what happens? You have these ICUs that end up at max and overcapacity. And mind you, while all of this is happening, there's still people who need to be in the ICU, heart attack, other diseases. So what happens? The more people that end up with this serious illness, it will have a ripple effect, right? Because you end up in the hospital, you taking a bed, and you're taking up a bed potentially for a very long time. And so, like, again, I like people to kind of think about it like, yes, everyone's looking at it as an individual decision. I understand that, right? I am vaccinated. I did get the Pfizer, mostly because it was what was available, right? But there's the individual choice, right? But then that choice, that has a ripple effect, right? And that'll affect how far and wide the transmission of the virus is going to be, which will affect how many people, a lot of people may just recover, have no symptoms or whatever, or you'll have people that become the long haulers. You could have people that end up in the ICU. Then what happens when that happens? Now you have, this huge public health issue, right? So now you're looking at the population as a whole. You're dealing with people who have these long-term illnesses. You're dealing with people who are in ICU for weeks at a time. That is really hard to deal with. And I know that for a person that's, you know, sitting at home and just saying like, I don't know about this vaccine, like this is so much bigger than us as an individual, right? And again, I'm not saying that to say that, you know, the issues that pertain to how Black people have been treated and continue to be treated by the medical system aren't important. I'm not saying that, right? I understand the mistrust. I definitely understand. But what I will ask people to do is kind of zoom out and look at this from a wider perspective. And when I'm in the classroom, I usually tell my students, right? If you don't like this solution, tell me what you would do, right? You're in charge. You're on Biden's COVID-19 task force and you're there. What are you going to say? Because you're not, at that point, you're not making a decision for yourself. You're not making a decision just for your family. You're making a decision for millions of people, right? And so my question, and this is not a question to be antagonistic, right? But my question is, what do you do when the fate of millions of people are in your hands? What decisions do you make?
That's a really good point. And I wanted to say that, you know, Shayla, your response definitely got me, you know, thinking. I'm not gonna say I'm like, oh, okay, I'm all about the vaccine now, but you know, it definitely got me thinking, right? Just kind of thinking broader, right, about this topic. And I appreciate, you know, you and everybody showing sensitivity to the issue of race and the fact that, you know, there's a good reason why a lot of people are hesitant about the vaccine, but also that we do have to think broader and think population wise. You know, so I just want to respond to that, and then I want to ask another question as well. Now, I think the one thing that still gives me a little bit of pause is because just like in politics, just like in voting, why is it the Black people got to save everybody, right? Why is it that Black people got to be the ones to say, okay, well now it's on you to take the vaccine. Now we got to question why Black people feel some kind of way about it. And it's like, well, we not the ones that y'all was killing. I mean, like y'all wasn't the ones that was being killed and all this stuff that's been happening historically and contemporarily. It wasn't happening to y'all. It was happening to us. So why do we have to be the ones that now have to have this like mental battle? And should we think individually or should we think more broadly? And now it's all on us. When in fact, we only make up, 13% of the population anyway. And so, and Dr. Shelley said earlier, you need 70% of vaccination for it to, you know, really be effective. That's white people. You can have none of the Black people be vaccinated and you can still get the 70% with white folks and with Latinx folks and with Asian Americans. So why talk
so I'll push back on that, because you have to look at where like the densities of where people are located. So like a lot of Black people, we're in urban areas. So then it's like, okay, cool. If we go with let's not have Black people, like let's not vaccinate, then you're basically then killing off pretty much all urban areas. So if it was a uniform situation where everybody was evenly dispersed out throughout the country, then yeah, you can get away with maybe like a subpopulation not doing anything. But since that's not how we're actually located, like we're actually pretty much segregated, like in where we live, then that necessarily won't work.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, along the same lines as Drew, as far as pushing back. Like for me, that's more like fuel to take the vaccine when I think about the impact that it's having on our community. And that's something that, you know, I wanted to talk about as well. When I think about like just how Black folks live in areas where we're concentrated together, like in cities where it's more like apartments and condos as opposed to, you know, houses that are more spread out. Like just the way the virus spreads makes us more susceptible to it. Plus add to that, that a lot of Black people are quote unquote essential workers who in many places are not eligible for the vaccine, but don't get me on that soapbox. But you have a ton of Black people who just through their job are getting exposed. I saw an article like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that talked about how there was a decline in the overall life expectancy of people in the US. And the biggest life expectancy decrease happened in Black men it was a 3-year decline in life expectancy. And the tone of the article was that a lot of this decrease in life expectancy overall was because of COVID. And to me, that tracks. You have the prison industrial complex where you have a lot of Black men in prisons. And that's a place where the virus is spreading like wildfire. On top of that, you have Black folks living in close proximity. You might have folks living in multi-generational housing where you're living with your kids, you're living with your parents. Just so much of how the structure has set up for us as Black folks just exacerbates the way the virus is spreading. To me, that's like, all right, we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to protect ourselves and our communities.
And so one of the things I do want to, and I definitely feel what you're saying, Dr. Hayda, like that's very important. And looking at it, especially from the essential worker, especially looking at it from a point of space and how we're spatially segregated, I think that's a really good point, Drew. And another thing, as we eventually transition into the takeout boxes section of our podcast. Dr. Hayda, I know, you got vaccinated. I know it's not like a secret or whatever. You put it on there. I'm looking to see if you're going to grow an extra leg. Okay. Because people want to know two things. I'm watching everybody else, right? Dr. Shelley say she got that. Okay. Well, let me see in about 6 months.
So let me tell you about that.
If you're going to grow an extra leg or an extra arm, that's one thing I'm trying to figure out. And next, I might be straight. What about my kid? You know what I'm saying? What about my kid, the next generation? Because I know people believe that vaccines may not affect this generation, but affect the next generation. So what are y'all responses to that?
So let me say this. So because I know a lot of people ask about, oh, this was developed quickly. I'll say yes and no. So when you look at Moderna's name, MOD, RNA, like the first 4 letters are lowercase, and then the last two are capitalized. And and their whole thing is, since their inception, is mRNA vaccine delivery. So it's not like, oh, who's Moderna? Where did they come from? Like, how did they get so fast? No, this really was somebody's PhD thesis there. They created a startup, got funded, and they've been doing this work for the past 10 plus years. So looking at Moderna, it's like, yeah, they've been working on this for at least a decade. Same thing with like a lot of vaccines. Like with the Janssen vaccine, it's based off the Ebola. It's based off the Ebola vaccine. It's because they were like, oh, you know what? It's this virus that kills a lot of people, and there's some similarities. So let's see if we can tweak our vaccine that we have for Ebola and make it work for COVID. But then that vaccine has been in development too. So when you look at research, people are doing a lot of stuff, and then it's disasters like this where people then get to shine. So right now, all the people who've been working with coronaviruses, like this is their time to shine. When H1N1 was about there, all those people who are working on like influenza, that was their time to shine. There's a few people who've been working with Zika, and then when Zika popped up, like that was their time to shine. So it's not that these things were like, oh, like this thing popped up, then people just quickly shifted. There have been people who've been working on these. This is people's careers, and stuff already been in place. And it's just that now that there's actual need for this, then we can actually push this forward and kind of show the importance of some of this research. For example, my wife, like she works with she worked on bee virus. So they're trying to get a bee virus vaccine. But then it's like, who needs a bee virus vaccine? Really, people who work with monkeys. But how many of us work with monkeys? Not everybody. But the benefit of them actually developing something like that, because bee virus is in the family of herpes. So then if they're like, oh, we have a vaccine that can treat this, oh, let's say goodbye to cold sores, goodbye to genital warts, goodbye, like better vaccines for chickenpox, all these other stuff, because viruses really are in families. And then if people are working on something similar and they find something that works with this, it can easily be translated to something else. So it's not a thing that's like, well, I'm gonna grow an arm or anything, like an extra arm or anything like that. Granted, now, me personally, what an extra arm, it might be beneficial to have an extra arm that's functional. So
I wanna I do not want an extra arm. I just want to point that out. But John, what I'll say, is so these vaccines have actually already gone through clinical trials, right? Which means that I know people are looking at, like us as the first round of people that got this vaccine, but we are not the first round of people that got this vaccine, right? So there were, at least when you think about clinical trials in drug or vaccine development, right? There are different phases, right? So they, obviously, not obviously, they first do, a lot of these make the discoveries in the lab, right? And so they're working with cells. Then they move into humans to make sure it's safe in sort of a phase 1 trial. And then in phase 2, they'll, start testing out dosing, like which dose works well. Phase 3 is like usually that massive last trial where they're like, does this work? Can we establish what is the efficacy, right? So they'll often have like some target, right? Like that we want to make sure, our goal is to see how it affects the progression of the disease, whether they end up in the hospital. But the point that I'm making is that if you look at, there have been papers published, right? So the data is available that tells you, okay, this is what happened in people that that have already gotten the vaccine. So at this point, honestly, I don't recall exactly when the trial started, but we'll have information or data on people who have had the vaccine for over, coming up on a year, right? And we'll start to understand what's happening long term. But I just want to remind people that although it's like just now becoming publicly available to the public, it is not the first time that it's been introduced in humans. There are a lot of people that have been walking around that have the vaccine, right? And that's why we know whether it works or not.
And let's talk a little bit about what to expect when you get the
Sure,
vaccine.
yeah.
So if you get the Pfizer or the Moderna, it's a 2 shot. So you get one day 1, and then you get it another one 21 to 28 days later. So sometimes, definitely, whenever you get a vaccine, you can have some pain, redness, swelling at the area of inoculation. Sometimes people complain of some tiredness, headaches, chills, fever, but usually these are symptoms that only last about a day to about 3 or 4 days afterward, and then you're fine. And so what we found, and what I've noticed, and just anecdotally in practice, is that most people, they don't really have as many symptoms initially, but then that second time, because once again, the reason why these symptoms come up is that your body is actually having an immune response to the vaccine. So it's actually responding, which is why you get the fevers, the chills, you feel unwell. But then sometimes when you get that second shot, it can cause you to have more symptoms than you did. And personal experience, I got my Pfizer. I didn't have any issues. Maybe I felt a little tired, but I felt like maybe I was more of a hypochondriac. I was like, oh, maybe I should rest. Maybe this is the vaccine. I don't know. And it was nothing. But the second time I felt nauseous for about a day, and then that was over. So it wasn't anything major. But like I said, I only have 2 arms, no third arm, no third, head coming out my neck. I'm okay. But sometimes you should expect some symptoms. I personally took Tylenol, right afterward, just so that if I felt chilly or had any muscle aches, I was good. That was on board. So, but the other thing I do want to point out is that these symptoms are very temporary. Like I said, I was nauseous, and I felt better the next day. But with COVID, the actual disease, you may not be so lucky, and your symptoms may be a lot worse.
now I'm wondering, I had a little soreness in my arm, but that was it. So now I'm like, do I need to tell them I need a third shot so I can have some of these, just make sure that my immune system is kicking up? Like, I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to be good.
I think the thing to remember is that vaccines they're pretty much a study guide for your body. That's really what they are. They're like kind of showing the bodies like, you know what, this is to protect you, or this is to give you a heads up of what's to come if it comes. So like as Alicia was saying earlier, like you get that, like it takes a little time for your body to get that, like develop that first immune response. But then by the time you're actually exposed to it again, your body's like, oh, you're here. All right, I was warned about you. It ramps up quickly and it's able to take care of it quickly.
I really appreciate that analogy of the study guide, that's what the vaccines are, and then it helps your immune system respond. So now we're at the space of saying our final thoughts. What are our takeout boxes? What are the major takeaways that you either gained in this conversation or that you want people to take away from this conversation? I invite anyone to start and I'll close.
I guess I'll start. So in my takeout box, thinking about this, not just from an individual perspective, like, Dr. Shorter was saying earlier, but, from a global perspective, and that this thing is really affecting, multiple groups. It's not like Tuskegee that was specifically targeted to one group and was able to be kind of, concentrated. It does add a different element to the conversation around race and equality. And so I appreciate that perspective. And then also something Drew said earlier about space, right? And why? Because Black people tend to be in spaces that are more, Black people in America tend to be in spaces that are more highly dense. Could also be a reason why it may be necessary for us to consider taking the vaccine. So this conversation has definitely opened my eyes to help me think broader. I still have some serious reservations, and so I probably need to listen to more podcasts, listen to more people who I actually want to hear from people who are in the medical field who don't believe in taking the vaccine, just like I'm listening to people who are in the medical field who do. So I still want to get a broad range of ideas. I like having a broad range of ideas. I do. Well, I don't know if I agree with silencing opposing thoughts. Because to me that does away with what America says it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Like having the freedom of the press, having the freedom of speech. So I don't know. I'm still going back and forth with that, but I do understand. I would like to get all of that and then kind of make a decision or be a little bit more forthright in my decision. But this conversation has definitely helped debunk a lot of the myths because I was kind of moving towards that, and so I'm appreciating that. Just the knowledge. But yeah, those main things was definitely in my takeout box.
And I'll say, as far as my takeout box was that I'm glad that you all invited us here to kind of talk and just have an open, honest conversation about the vaccine. And I hope that everyone kind of takes more educated information. And the last thing I would say is just be careful where you get your sources from. I've had a couple people in my office this week who were getting sources from their brother-in-law, sister, cousin, who just, does nothing to do with medical field, works in refrigeration, and said, oh no, they can't possibly have the Pfizer vaccine be that cold. That's why it doesn't work well. And so it's just be careful where you get your information. Definitely use, I would say, vetted sources, medical sources, the CDC, WHO, things of that nature to kind of get your answers. And then most importantly, talk to your doctor about it. Make sure you're a good candidate for it. They know your history. They know kind of whether you would be that perfect person or there's any reservations they have.
Yeah, I will echo. I'm really glad and happy to have had this conversation. I think these are the types of conversations that we do need to have amongst us in our community, because it is hard, especially after a year like we had. It's really, really hard to think about all that we've been through as a community. And you just don't want any more. You don't want to be, to put yourself in the position to be victimized, for lack of a better word, right? So I get it. It's like, nah, we don't want this anymore, and my heart hurts because I do think that you know what the medical system, what the world, what white supremacy has done is both exacerbated why Black people are more prone to having more serious complications to this, and it has also led to the deep mistrust of the system. So I will just say that I just want people to know that even as a scientist, my heart hurts because I get it. I get it. Even as a scientist, I was thinking, man, I'm about to get this vaccine. Even knowing what's in it, knowing people that worked on the vaccine, you know what I mean? So I get it, but what I will say is, like, we need to I would advocate for taking the vaccine, but I think that we should just keep on pushing to remedy some the issues that this whole pandemic has brought up regarding access to health and you know all of that. So I just thank you for having me. This was a really great conversation.
I do want to echo, I guess, what's been said before. I do like things. The thing that we definitely do need more topics and discussions like this. I'd even go as far as saying we probably even have like just mini courses on what, like, just explain the basic science in some of these so people can get like a full understanding of like the whole process, even to things like just like the whole FDA and the EUA process. It's good to be critical. That's one thing I would advocate for. It's good to be critical. And as was mentioned before, just make sure you're getting information from reliable sources. One thing I was telling my mother, WhatsApp is not a reliable source for information. Like I told her, it's like just off the bat, if anybody sends you on WhatsApp, just tell them that it's wrong. But yeah, but just make sure like where you're getting information from, and then if you're quite not sure about it, like find somebody who is in that space. I'm pretty sure right now, if you probably go somewhere, like find someone's email address, send like an email, it's like, hey, this is who I am. I just had a question about this. Will you be able to answer some of my questions? Like, surely somebody's able like to answer a question or two. So yeah, so just be mindful of your sources. And I would recommend getting the vaccine. I'm just waiting for my turn to get it. And once I become eligible, I am going to go for it, just because the vaccine protects you. And then if enough people take the vaccine, then they're able to protect others. So.
I'm so appreciative of this conversation. Some of y'all know my wedding was supposed to be last year. So I am a COVID bride. So I've been following, the stories around it really closely because, we had to postpone and everything. So I appreciate like so much of the information that you all brought. I think my takeout is just, I wish we had more time. I really wanted to get into accessibility within the Black community, because it seems like that is becoming a real issue, that there are just some communities where the delivery trucks or however it gets there just not going to these communities. Or, we've heard stories about different Black communities where the lines are all white people. And so Black people are not getting access to the vaccine the way they might desire. So one other thing that I was thinking of, and y'all can please like fact check me on this, but I heard on a show, there was a Black woman who was a guest, a doctor, who reminded everyone that Tuskegee was not the medical folks providing a vaccine to the men. It was them withholding a vaccine for syphilis, which they had. They just wanted to see what would happen if you left syphilis untreated for 10, 20, 30 years. And that to me was like, oh, wow, I definitely don't want to be a part of withholding a vaccine from my community, like was there. So there are just so many things that y'all dropped, so many like different nuggets that I really appreciated hearing and clarifying some of the things that I'd heard.
And I appreciate you saying that, Jackie, because it's just making me think like it's just so many pieces of information that factor into this kind of decision, right? And honestly, like my biggest takeaway is the value of having close connections to people who know stuff. So, and actually having access to people who like you three here who are in this field, in this space, you study it, you know it. And for me, honestly, I have the privilege of knowing Shayla very, very well. And so honestly, hearing her impassioned and very serious tone around like how crucial this vaccine is and how many people it's affecting, that did something to me, where now I'm just like, this is bigger than me. It's so much bigger than me. It's so much bigger than the ways that I've connected different things and in some ways. And it's just really touched me and it's brought me back to remembering like this has affected a lot of people. And if we don't do something now, this will kill more people. And remembering that and knowing that there are already hundreds of thousands of lives that have been taken in America, and Black people have lost loved ones. Like this isn't theoretical. This isn't a myth. The loss of lives isn't a myth. And honestly, that draws me to want us to just take a moment of silence for the people who have lost their lives in America, globally, from COVID-19, because whether or not you think you're gonna get it, there have been people who have died and who have lost loved ones at times that they just didn't expect, who weren't ready, and whose lives are completely in disarray right now. And it reminds me of just the number of people globally who are grieving right now because of COVID-19 and how long that grieving process will be. I mean, we just like, I think it was Shayla, or I forget who just said that, there's already people there outside of COVID-19, there's already a lot of loss, right? The hospitals are already full. So like, if you just kind of get with standard death rates in the world, then add COVID-19 on top of that, that is a lot of collective grieving that the earth is doing. And I don't want to forget that human life is actually being lost because of this. So I invite us to just take just a few moments, about 30 seconds or so, just for a moment of silence to remember and honor those who have been lost. Thank you all. And to close, John, I kick it to you.
Hey, it's been another episode, y'all. Street Academy Podcast. Are all hearts and minds clear? Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
I'm full, y'all. I'm full. This was such an incredible conversation. Great thoughts, great ideas. a lot of information, not just what some conspiracy, so-called conspiracy and myths and what the streets are saying, but also, what is real, the facts that are out there. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you, our guests, for just on the ground level and just helping come up with solutions. You know what I'm saying? You have people from the statistical standpoint checking out that macro data. You know what I'm saying? Like my brother Drew, you got PhDs doing the research, like Dr. Shorter, working in organizations and nonprofits and students, helping to get this information, who have a passion for people and a love for people. You got Dr. Shelley out here who's actually in the hospitals and essentially, I don't know what degree, but working with sick people, putting her life on the line. You know what I'm saying? And so we just appreciate y'all. Y'all are the essential workers that are on the front lines of this, that's doing this work, that's right here, helping to save our lives and helping to give us the information that we need. So we want to salute y'all. We want to let y'all know that we're so grateful for y'all and y'all work, and just continue support. And you probably don't hear it enough, but just know from Street Academy Podcast and everybody who support us and everybody listening, we definitely show you love and we appreciate y'all. And we appreciate y'all for being on this podcast. Thank y'all so much. Super excited. Thank y'all for listening to this episode. Continue to follow us at Street Academy Podcast. I did a Twitter too. I don't think I told y'all. I was bored yesterday. I had watched enough sermons and I was like, I'm bored. I'm gonna open up the Street Academy Twitter. So we got a Twitter at Street Academy P, or you could type in Street Academy Podcast on Twitter. We up there too. And you could always find us on YouTube. Definitely subscribe to Street Academy Podcast on Twitter. Definitely want to give the guests the opportunity to give out their handles, where they can find you, what you're doing, what you got coming up. If they want to get more information on you or more information on things that are important to you, definitely give us your handles. As always, we'll give our handles. Street Academy Podcast, we'll give our handles, and then we'll go ahead and close out. So guests, go ahead and tell our people where y'all at.
Well, I'll say I wish I were just more social media savvy, and I wish I had a handle to drop. I wish I had a handle to drop. But you can find me. My name is Dr. Shayla Shorter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message if you have some questions about COVID-19 from a scientific perspective. I'm always happy to talk about stuff like this. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shayla.
And you can find me on Twitter at Dr. Shelley MD, and on LinkedIn too as well.
I'm just like Shayla. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn.
Boring old people. At J. Paul Grant, that's where I am on IG. I think I'm at on Twitter. I can't remember. Facebook, JPG, website www.jpaulgrant.com.
Oh, fancy.
And I'm on IG, not really active either, still working on it, at Amber Camila, and also my project that I'm still working on at Relearn Anything.
And I am at Jacket Demission on all of the things.
All the things. All the things. All right. Last time before we close out, everybody feeling good? Hearts and minds?
Can I just say one more thing?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I'm just so happy.
I was like, somebody feeling something.
I'm just so happy to have Black people that I can trust.
That's it.
That's giving me this information. I cannot say that enough, how important this conversation has helped, because it's Black people that I trust. Like that changes everything. The information changes everything. So for me, it's just a reminder of the importance of community and the importance of communication and connection and relationship and having a village. Because if we were all in a village together, we would have all the doctors around us. We would have everybody would be serving their role. And so it's just like, we would have that in us, and there would be more trust if we were in a village. So this to me is just the representation of the village. And it's just like having that village information is nothing like it. Like I feel different because of the trust that's here, because of, it's just like the deep mistrust I have for the deep trust I have for like Shayla in this instance, and also for the Drew and Dr. Shelley, by way, like we know each other, but then also by way of connection, knowing each other, right? That doesn't cancel out completely the deep mistrust of the American healthcare system. However, it does do some rebalancing of it. And that is so valuable.
Yeah.
I just have to say that. Have a village. I feel like a village is so crucial.
For sure.
No, I'm so glad you said that. And yeah, those are my sentiments exactly. So I'm really glad you said that, Amber, at the end. So
all right.
Cool. All right, sounds good. We appreciate y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep one foot in the academy and one foot in the streets eats. We out this piece.
Keep up, 8 pound down. 8.
That you know got their feet upon the neck of the haters, the game and the devil like